Well, welcome back to the beautiful Pacific Northwest. This is David, and let's get started with this week's story on PacWestBigfoot.com. In lieu of the holiday here, we're going to go ahead and give you a nice little story or encounter here during Thanksgiving. So let's get started here. This one is titled Me, Thanksgiving, and Bigfoot, the Turkey Hunt Surprise. This is a short event, a short story, if you will, about me, Thanksgiving, and Bigfoot. And trust me, this was the biggest surprise ever. Heck, not even a surprise as much as a what in the world moment. I have hunted for wild turkey now around the Three Sisters for about 40 years or so. Most of the time I would head out of the little town of Sisters I grew up in towards the Three Creeks Lake. Up Old Three Creek Lake Road, of course, so that you know the area, just in case. I was not married or had any kids at the time of the event, so I was alone, and when I got back home my parents were skeptical at first about my story. But here is my Thanksgiving story of me, Bigfoot, and a turkey hunt turned crazy anyways. Part 1. Thanks-taking, more like it. I am a hunter and a fisherman from a very rural part of Oregon, and a very conservative one for being this far north of Roseburg and the Rogue Valley in general. I hunt deer for meat and turkey too for my family, and just as I did when the event took place. I am not much for elk hunting, but it is not unheard of me to grab a tag for one every few seasons or so, and personally I like bow hunting when it comes to deer, but of course that is a little ridiculous when it comes to hunting turkey. A shotgun is the best tool for that. This incident happened just before Thanksgiving back in 2007. I was still living at home at the time. I had just graduated college and was helping my parents with the Christmas tree farm we owned. I was going to be a third-generation Christmas tree farmer. And just so you know, I am, and was at the time, totally happy about that lot in life. I love the holidays, and to play a part in it like that of the Christmas tree farmer and make a great living, well, count me in. Of course, we were, and are, pretty green-thumbed family, and we also run a plant nursery as well. We simply dig flora, I suppose. But back to the theft at hand. Let me take a little sip of SasquatchCoffee.com. Yeah. I have decided to grab a couple of turkeys this year for the Thanksgiving holiday that was just a couple days away at the time. I headed out an old road that eventually turned to dirt, but well kept. Everything here in Oregon is pretty well kept, actually, even today. I love the Three Creek Lakes area for hunting the old gobbler. Up here at the top of the Cascade Mountains in the Three Sisters Wilderness, it is simply beautiful. This part of creation just can't be beaten, if you ask me personally. Every kind of pine tree is up here, from spruce to the giant Douglas fir, and of course the more deciduous kinds seem to flourish here, like the black oak and even a certain type of willow tree and walnut trees. Fauna of all kinds roams here too. I have personally seen and hunted bear, mountain lion, quail, pheasant, and an elk or two through the years. But as I said above, turkey and deer are my thing next to fishing for salmon on the Crooked River. What I did not know was that my parents and I were not sold on the existence of an animal roaming the Pacific Northwest like that of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. However, my grandfather did say that once he saw one on the back 20 acres of the tree farm in the late 1960s. No, we don't do any drugs. Neither did he. All I'm saying is that my grandfather was a Marine who served his country in France during World War II, and he was an honest man that everyone could trust, so making up stories was not his thing. I was not sure about the subject myself, and unless there was some obscure television show on mentioning it, I never really thought about the Bigfoot thing out here much. Yes, I had not made up my mind until that day either way, but I would say I was open-minded, at least, when it came to the idea Bigfoot might exist. Well, like I said before, I've seen animals like cougar and bear, but that was only twice in my life, and I live in the thick of it here. But let's get on with the day that changed my beliefs. Part 2. getting out there. Turkey hunting, like any other type of hunting, comes down to patience, not persistence. I said patience. See, once you get to your spot out here in the Cascades, you do not feel like wandering around in the snow all that much, so you're pretty persistent about sitting still. Patience is what it takes, and I was and am a patient man. I reached my destination that day in a pretty little opening that was longer than it was wider, but on both sides was surrounded by thick alpine forest. It was a great day, making it all that much It was a gray day, making it all that much darker, which is good for hiding. Snow would fall here and there, and the first of the winter snow we get at this elevation had already been falling since earlier in the month. That day there must have been nearly 9 inches or so on the side of the road accumulated already. Fortunately, the snow that fell now on that day was just a few flakes here and there, nothing to worry about at the time. All was quiet, but some birds, of course, and as I could tell as I walked to my favorite spot for hunting, I noticed a ton of turkey droppings, poopy as my kids call it, all around the forest floor. It made it easier to miss when the forest floor was covered in white snow. I made it to my blind. I had a blind. Actually, I had 4 of them spread over 600 yards the length of the open area that looked more like a road that was not finished being cut through in the mountains. The blinds were just large branches, really, formed into a little hut of sorts, just enough room for 2 people and a couple of folding chairs. I started up with the turkey calls after I settled in. With turkey, you do not need to sneak up on them and be all that still and like with deer or other wildlife. But you do want to get some practice in being quiet and practicing some patience, even while turkey hunting. Patience while hunting is always the key to feeding yourself and your family. The turkey hunt gone wrong, part 3. I heard nothing except the gobblers coming in. Every 4 to 8 minutes I would give a call out with my little gobbler call I got for Christmas the previous year. So far it was working great. I could hear them coming in. Oh, just so you know, I also had a decoy sitting out there, and of course, it was female. They came straight down the clearing from the west, heading east. There were 3 males, 2 female, and I think there were a few young ones. I could not tell what sex they were just yet. But who cared? The big ones were on their way. Some have asked me if there was anything that I might have missed, like the sounds of birds or insects going silent before the moment it struck. And I have to say, there was nothing. Everything seemed normal. I do not remember anything out of the ordinary up to that moment. But as I scooted down the clearing, the gang of turkeys moved faster now as one of the males himself noticed my little decoy and started making a beeline for it. At the same time, I was ready. My Mossberg 500 turkey shotgun was ready, and I was starting to feel a little impatient finally. Hey, it was getting cold, and the snow was starting to fall heavier by late afternoon. He made it to the decoy. I raised my shotgun and started to aim, and that's when the craziest event in my life unfolded. As if on cue, what I thought was probably a myth up to that point ran out of the forest directly across from me and towards the turkey. It was at least 8 to 9 feet tall. Its body was covered with hair except around the face, of which it was the color of grayish ash, and was as worn-looking as my grandfather's old baseball mitt. The hair was not too long, probably a couple inches in length throughout the body, but it did have some longer hair, it seemed, running down its back as it left. At least that's what I noticed. It was huge, fast, and took 2 of them in an instant. It grabbed both a male and a female that had followed the male moments before this huge beast came out of nowhere. I noticed that the eyes were rather big, but I could not make out a color. It was walking, bipedal, and it was fast. I also noticed that the top of his head was slightly cone-shaped, but not as much as you might see in drawings people do nowadays. I did not see any teeth. It all just happened too fast for that kind of detail, but anyways, I'm not sure I would have cared to see them anyways. As it grabbed 2 turkeys and then situated them quickly in its hand, basically wrapping its huge hands around their necks. Once it did, it squeezed the life instantly out of both the birds. I watched as their lifeless bodies went limp immediately. I looked. I took that. It took that creature 2 steps out of the woods and 2 steps back into them before it was out of sight. After about 30 seconds or so, I heard a howl that lasted 20 seconds or more. Seemed to be about 300 to 400 yards away. Boy, that thing could move. My heart was still pounding, and it was starting to get dark at that moment, so I decided to quietly head back to my pickup and go home. I wandered through the woods and snow, and what I felt was shock. For some reason, the fear of everything that just happened did not hit me until I was halfway home, though. That is when I pulled over, got out of the truck, and threw up on the side of the road. Suffice it to say, we bought our birds that year, and to this day I still do not go up that way to hunt turkey. Instead, I head out in the back 20, where they are always coming around. Talk about a turkey hunt gone crazy. To this day, my wife and kids poke a little fun at me, but I know they believe me, because like my grandfather, I'm an honest man who honestly saw something scary and amazing all at once, many Thanksgivings ago.